and it is just a fantastic beast, and you still can't believe when you're standing in front of the real thing and you smell the leather and the oil and the whole machinery, and it's just like, wow, it's really overwhelming. But then you have to step back a little bit, switch off the car geek, and make something special out of the shoot.
Steffen Jahn, one of the world's finest automotive photographers, talking about getting up close with one of everyone's favourite cars, a vintage Lamborghini Countach. More from Steffen soon. Welcome to the Viewfinders Photography Podcast, where I talk with some of the best photographers in the world in an attempt to find out how they got to the top of their niche and what they're thinking when they lift the camera. My name is Graham Dargy. I'm a professional photographer from the Granite City, Aberdeen in Scotland. Thanks for spending this time with me today. I hope you're safe and well wherever you are. First off, thanks for the fantastic reception to the previous episode with Ulla Lohman, the volcano lady. People seem to have really got that episode. I've had some great feedback, and it's always really good to hear when things resonate with people. So if you haven't checked out the previous episode, I recommend it. I also wanted to mention an episode from last year with one of my all-time photography heroes, Howard Schatz. I was listening back to this one the other day, and it just reminded me how lucky I am to get to do this, to have these conversations with amazing photographers. And I was listening to that episode thinking that really happened. I really got to spend an hour with Howard Schatz, picking his brain and asking him whatever I thought was a good question on the day. So yeah, just feeling super grateful for that, and for you listeners who support the show and really make it all possible. So wanted to shout out that episode with the amazing Howard Schatz and recommend that you check that out if you haven't already. Otherwise, what have I been up to this week? Just finishing up the school summer holidays here, and my daughter started P2 the other day, so much excitement in our house. Photography wise, just hustling, putting out quotes, doing blogs, LinkedIn posts, all the glamorous things that you have to do when you have your own business. I've got a corporate headshot job today when this episode comes out, and a few other things in the offing which I'll tell you about once they're done. Also, as always, working on the next Viewfinders live events. Check out the ad slots for the latest information on that. Okay, before we get into the episode, a quick shout out to listener Andy Kruzek. Sorry if I messed up your name, Andy, who got in touch the other day on Instagram. Thanks for the kind feedback, Andy. You can connect with me on Instagram at Viewfinders Podcast. Drop me a line to say hi and I'll mention you on the show. Also, subscribe, rate and review Viewfinders on your favourite podcast platform. That's the best way to help me get the show in front of more listeners, and I really, really appreciate it. Okay, my guest this week is Steffen Jahn, an automotive photographer based in Stuttgart, Germany, whose clients include Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, BMW, and if that's not enough, just about every other leading brand you can think of. Steffen travels the world to create award-winning images, whether it's in a jungle, an Arctic test track, the streets of New York, or in an LA studio. His photographs blend technical sophistication with an authentic and natural feel, resulting in images that really set themselves apart. Automotive photography at this level is high-end, high-pressure stuff, and I can't think of anybody in the world who's better at it than Steffen. Our conversation covers how Steffen got started as an assistant in a photography studio, how he handled his first solo assignment for Mercedes, the differences between shooting in studio versus on location, as well as diving into a few specific shoots and much, much more. Steffen is a technical master craftsman with huge experience who excels at bringing a human touch to everything he does. And he's just a super nice guy, so there's plenty to take away here. Hope you enjoy my conversation with Steffen Jahn. Steffen Jahn, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi Graham, thank you. Very good. Hope you too.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I've always wanted to have an automotive photographer on the podcast. Your work, the way I see it, is very technical, very precise, but there's still aspirational or lifestyle elements and a playfulness in your portfolio that I've found. and you're working on very high-end projects with really big clients, which is really interesting to me as a working photographer. I'd love to talk with you more about that. So I'm looking forward to getting into some of those things with you, but I think you're based in Stuttgart, is that right?
That's correct, yes. So in the south of Germany, where also Mercedes and Porsche is situated, so strategically well placed.
Yeah, for what you do, yeah. So I was going to ask, I knew Porsche was there. I didn't know about Mercedes, but having that in the town, what shadow does that cast on Stuttgart, or what kind of atmosphere does that set in the city?
Probably you will never see more Porsche 911s driving around than in Stuttgart. So here it is really quite common to see these luxury cars all day around. Mm-hmm. And you wonder when you're going to other cities, oh my God, where are all these beautiful 911s gone? You know,
yeah, everybody has one. Okay, cool. Okay, so did you grow up in Stuttgart, or you from somewhere else?
Actually, I was born in Bavaria, then went to a city in the middle of Germany, Göttingen, and then for my apprenticeship in a studio, I went down to Stuttgart and stayed there.
Okay, and so that was my next question. When did photography come on your radar? Were you into it as a child growing up, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it was in school. I chose Russian as my second language, and mostly because there was a class journey to Moscow and Leningrad, as it was named these days. Mm-hmm. And for this journey, I was buying a Minolta XGM with loads of Kodachrome, and more or less started photography on this journey to these cities. Yeah.
Okay, I'm wondering when cars came on your radar. I assume you're enthusiastic about cars anyway, and I always wonder where the love was first, with the photography or the cars, or how they blended.
Probably cars were first. So my mother tells me every time that when I was running around as a child, I had a Matchbox car in every hand. Okay. So maybe Matchbox cars started the car fire, the petrol headiness in me. Mm-hmm. But then after I finished school, I was looking for an apprenticeship to learn photography professionally. And I went down to Stuttgart because there is the René Staudt studios, which are pretty famous for being huge studios only dedicated to cars.
Okay.
And so big that you can also drive buses and trucks in the studio.
Okay. I guess Germany has so many manufacturers. Car photography, maybe that's a viable career path for a young person.
I was at that time, I wasn't so much focused on cars. It was more like photography at all. It was like the fantastic, beautiful jungle to go in. But then working with these cars, and it really lights even more the fire, and I was deciding to go in this direction.
Okay, so thinking back to that apprenticeship, that sounds really good to me. For me, my journey with photography had gone from sort of enthusiast. I went to college for a couple of years, which was good experience. And then I started my business, and that's when you start learning. And I've been learning on my own ever since. So when I hear people had an apprenticeship or something like that, I feel that must have been such a good grounding for you. I feel you would learn so much under somebody else's wing. Can you think back to that time and think about what you really took away from that time as an apprentice?
I mean, I was lucky because in this studio complex, to say it, are 3 photographers, hired photographers who were working, and as well because it was quite unique because of its largeness or size. Mm-hmm. It was very often hired from other photographers from worldwide. So American photographers, British photographers, car photographers came in to shoot for Porsche or Mercedes in these studios. And so you picked up the basics, the technical basics from car photography, lighting, reflection, panels, shadow, blah, blah. And as well, which was even more important, how to communicate and how to handle your clients. So some people were pulling off a big dog and pony show. Some were really the efficient precision, just I do exactly the image and that's it. And so you had the whole bandwidth of different personalities of photographers.
Okay. So for your personality, did that allow you to feel confident that you would be able to do it your way?
I mean, at that point in time, it looked like, or it felt like a miracle that you get a job, you know, like 2 weeks shooting the new Mercedes SL or so. I was completely clueless how to get a job like this. So it was like just making ends meet and do your daily work, and it was not really a question, how will I proceed in this profession?
From the apprenticeship, did you sort of graduate to being your own professional, or did you work then for somebody else that you met there? How did it go forward from there?
Yeah, so I was then working for Dietmar Hennecker, quite famous photographer in the 80s and 90s in Germany and in the car business. He was renting quite a lot of time the studio, and for marketing reasons I was always wearing not a tie but a bow tie. A bow tie. And though he said, I want to hire the bloody assistant with a bow tie every time. And so he was famous for his clear words and speaking out loudly. And if you would interview him, you would only hear beep and beep and beep.
Okay, but the bow tie worked out for you. That
worked perfectly as my first marketing instrument. And so I was, after finishing the apprenticeship, I was working for 9 months and 1 day for him.
Okay.
And then moved to the next photographer. Yeah, which was not so challenging and loud.
Okay, yeah, so he was a big personality, we could say. But for you, I'm interested in the bow tie, because that was something you did on purpose so people would remember you?
Yes, yeah. So just to stand out, because there were like 10 or 11 assistants in the studio.
Okay.
And because nobody remembers names.
Yeah.
Right, Peter? And
exactly.
Graham, I know. And therefore I just said, okay, I have to stand out from the crowd, and yeah.
It's a great way to do it. I do it with my hairstyle. That's why people can remember me.
Good move.
The bald guy. and being incredibly small as well helps. So, well, there's another photographer that I've spoken to, Gregory Heisler, who always wears a bow tie. He's a portrait photographer from the States. Yeah. And it's definitely like his calling card kind of thing, but if you see him at work, behind the scenes shots, he's dressed up, like he's dapper, you know. But even when I called him, he was wearing like a denim shirt, but he still had a bow tie on because it's just his thing. So I'm putting the pieces together now, thinking if I want to be a successful photographer, I need to start buying bow ties. But maybe I'm missing the point. I don't know. Okay, so casting back to your days as an assistant, again, I'm keen to understand if there are things that you can take away that you do now today that you really learned in those days. Is it really just a solid foundation like I'm thinking it is, or what are the takeaways from or working with different photographers? Maybe you pick up different things. I don't know if that was really a question, but maybe you can say something in response.
Yeah, I think what you really learn with being an assistant, and I think it was about 8 or 9 years I was working as a fixed freelance assistant for different photographers is that you get an incredible routine in doing things. So you don't think twice when you set up a camera or fixing a light or fixing a flag or stuff like this. It just comes natural, and it's just you don't sit down and do philosophical things about lighting, but you just do it quickly and very German efficiently.
You just get it right.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would definitely do assisting. Okay, so you did that for a few years then as an assistant, and then when did you go on your own? And do you remember what was your first kind of solo big car manufacturer job?
So my first real job was with, I think it was with 28, something around like this. And I was lucky enough to meet a lot of art directors on the shootings. And so my first job was a Mercedes brochure to shoot, which is kind of high class. And it was, I think, 3 weeks in a studio and shooting interiors of the new C-Class, which is pretty uncommon because normally you're starting with 1 day or half a day and you get a small test shoot here and there. But this art director was so convinced that he said, okay, I can hire Steffen for this really massive job.
The guy with the bow tie.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did that land on you? It's one thing to think, okay, that's what I want to do, but then when now it's your turn to do it, how were you feeling that at the beginning of that day? Did you sleep the night before, or were you feeling a bit of pressure there?
I mean, yeah, you can imagine it was not a little bit, but massively frightening because you have, it's a massive amount of money that you have to take in your hands, and you have to hire the studio and the assistants and the equipment, buying a lot of stuff that you can get the job done. And so I was really nervous, and I was very, very happy when the first sheet film came out of the lab, properly exposed, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's Mercedes. I mean, it's no small deal, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get it right, because if you blow your first job, you probably won't get your feet down in this industry for the next job.
I wanted to set the scene then for people listening, and for myself who are not an insider to what you do. How is it like to work with your client? I wanted to see if you can describe the relationship between you and the client, and the chain that is there maybe between you, the agency, art director, client. If you can lay that out for us so that people can understand where you fit in that puzzle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I mean, normally you get contacted by the agency, which decides that you are the photographer best suited for that project, and then you get, then the client comes in at a more or less late point in the whole thing. So maybe the first time you meet the client is in the shoot briefing shortly before the project starts, and the client more or less is just approving the photographer. He said, yes, I can see in his portfolio he's the one in doing it, but he's not too much involved in the shoot, and very often even do not show up on the shooting. So the main connection you have is between photographer and art director or creative director from the agency.
Okay, and then so did they come to you with completely pre-visualized imagery that they want to create, or do you have some say in the look of the photographs?
I mean, these days you have very often photorealistic layouts already comped together in Photoshop, and there is most of the time only very little creative input you can deliver. So creativity in this kind of work is like, make it happen.
Okay.
So there's not that I can choose or say, I don't see a desert in the background. I would see a lush forest, more likely. So the perspective of the car is exactly determined beforehand by the designers. So they are so-called walk-around shootings, when another photographer is taking hundreds of pictures exactly with a measurement. So like, say, 10 meters distance, camera high is 45 centimeters, and you're using the 50 millimeter lens. And then you get this information saying, if you want to shoot the 3/4 front from this car, it's exactly 10 meters, 45 centimeters up, and we show it at a 22.5 degree angle.
Okay, wow.
Because this is the angle the designer is seeing the car.
Yeah, they've
And so
decided that's the right angle for this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and you just have to follow that, and you have to compose your image around this setting.
So it's very specific then, very tight for you, and like your job is now to join the pieces together and make it happen. I wanted to touch then on location shooting, and look maybe at studio shooting as a separate thing, if we can. There probably might be some crossover, but so you start with that pre-visualization. What are the next steps from there when you have to put together your crew and you're shooting listing, put your mind in the right place for it? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so after you get the agency briefing and all the information how the images should look like, you pull together your crew. Mostly the first thing you get into the boat is the production company and a producer, and you're discussing, okay, we have this budget and have to handle this project, so how do we manage it? And you also send out location scouts to look for the defined location. So you, the photographer, are briefing the scouts, and you say, okay, I need colorful modern architecture with at the coast, or I need old brickyard factories, or whatever your desire is. And these guys either make file pulls from existing files they already have in their library, or they are going out and looking sometimes for weeks for the perfect location. Okay,
so you've figured that out, and you get on with the shoot. So stepping into that day, I was interested to talk to you about your own photography setup if you're shooting on location. It's interesting to understand. I think you're using, is it Mamiya and Leaf cameras? I think I saw that somewhere. I'll let you answer it. What cameras and gear are you using on the day?
Yeah, so for commercial shootings like this, I moved to Phase 1 XF camera with the IQ4 150 digital back, which offers the highest resolution and the best image quality, as it's a medium format camera. And I always shoot tethered, so straight into a MacBook Pro, which is set up on the location. And so it's 99% tripod, of course, because you have to precisely fix the angle and the position, and then there is not this one shot, of course, in these days, but you do many shots with changing light. You are adding flashlight or lighting effects or people around the car, and deliver, let's say, from one motive probably 500 to 600 files to the post-production.
Yeah, I was going to ask about lighting because I assumed that you're using lighting on location, but your work doesn't really look lit as such, if you know what I mean. So I guess that's the trick, isn't it? So are you are you saying that you deliver many pictures from the same angle and they get comped, or it's just a lot of different options from the same kind of composition?
Yeah, so it's mainly from exactly the same position.
Okay.
So you are nailing down the camera, fix the camera, and then starting walking around the car with your flashlight, doing many different flash exposures on the car, and then afterwards you're deciding, okay, this looks nice here because this design line is featured here, and we got the rims beautiful lit here, and the bumper is getting a little nice shiny highlight here, and then these different pieces are comped together in post-production.
They get sent over to somebody who'll put them together. It's not you who's doing the compositing.
No, because this is a level of Photoshop skills that are beyond my my brain.
Yeah. I wanted to look at a couple of, one or two of the location shoots then that are on your website. The first one that I wanted to mention was the one with the Toyota Supra, which is, to me, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but more a traditional style of car photography where the car appears to be moving. Do you know the shoot I'm talking about? There's a red Supra. So is it really what it looks like, or is that some kind of a composite?
No, this is really what it looks like. So you have these massive blurred backgrounds on these images, and the American agency, they are wanted exactly this, let's say, vintage look to these images. Mm-hmm. It's rig photography, and it was pretty much big in the 80s. So probably every second car picture was done in this technology.
Yeah,
and it's and the trick is that you put specialized carbon fiber arm, fix it onto the car like a selfie stick, so to say.
Right.
And it goes out up to 10, 12, 13 meters, and the camera is fixed on the end of that selfie stick. And then the car is moving very slowly, so like pushed by hand, and you're exposing like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, and then get these nicely turning rims, turning wheels, the blurred background, all the blurred reflections in the car's body, and these one perfect shot.
Yeah, it's beautifully done. I think that's what I meant when I said traditional. It's more sort of an old school look, isn't it? But it's so nicely done. I was thinking you were hanging out the back of another car driving along there, but maybe they don't do it that. Maybe that's like my lo-fi way of doing things.
No, you do it. These car-to-car shoots are also like daily bread and butter, but of course it's not so exactly. It's more like a run-and-gun version, because the cars are moving, the distance is changing, the angles are changing, and if you have these precise wishes of distance, angle, height, camera height or so, it can be super easy achieved by this rig technology.
Okay.
And because you do the same distance of road 10, 12, 20 times, and then you can exactly compose together what you need from these separate files.
Okay. I guess that, you're hanging out of the car, shooting it as more of a car magazine style, maybe, I guess, where less precise, but you still give you the same kind of feel, I suppose. The other one I wanted to quickly bring up was a shoot for Volkswagen in 2020. I think it's maybe for the Chinese marketing. Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to ask about this one was because it has people involved in the shots. And that seems like another layer of complication for you. Can Can you talk a bit about that shoot? And now that I've heard what you said, I'm wondering if the people were even there at all. But can you talk about that? So the cars are set out, nicely in an environment, and there are people around them in a lifestyle kind of way. So maybe you can talk about how those are achieved.
Yeah, so this is quite revolutionary for the Chinese market, because I was, let's say, started shooting in China 10, 12, 13 years ago, and they did a lot in the studio. They did a lot of retouching, and it was a very artificial way of shooting. So they come together many pieces and backgrounds and parts from the car, and this specific shooting was the start of a new way of seeing photography and advertising for VW in China. So this is all real. So it's all one shot.
Okay.
So people were on location, the lighting, everything is done in one single frame, because they wanted to go away from this artificial, and you never can avoid of that the viewer is saying, yeah, but I think it's not one shot. I don't feel comfortable with this picture. It looks somehow come together. And they want to go in this authentic, real direction of photography. And so really the people, the models, everything was on set and shot exactly like seen.
Okay, but presumably still with that tight brief that you described before, where you're shooting exactly the way they want it.
Yes, and the in China the briefing is much more precise, and they are accepting much less variations on that. So it is absolutely nailed down this, and you have to deliver exactly what you see on the layout.
Okay, so this guy is leaning on the front of the car, his hand is like this, his foot is up like that. It's very, very precise.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so interesting. I know now that I couldn't do this, because my approach is usually like I'll start with being a really good plan, but then when I get going, I'm like, oh, this is fine, it's close enough, and or something like that. So I know that you're a different kind of shooter than I am. Let me ask about working in the studio then. I was going to ask if that gives you more control, but it all sounds very controlled. Maybe more creative possibilities. There was a couple of shots of yours that seemed to have light painting in there, and I was wondering if that was an in-camera thing. But so if I can, let's go get specific then. There was a shoot, it's on the front of your website, with the Audi, is it E-Legend Quattro?
Ah, yeah.
And so it's a modern, it looks like a new style electric car. There seems to me like there's light painting going on in the frame. Can you talk about that? Is that a typical studio shot, or is that one a little bit different?
This one was a little bit different, because it was not really shot in a studio, in a dedicated car photography studio, but at the manufacturer. So the car is like a reincarnation from the original Audi Quattro, and it was just imagining how this car would look today. And it's not directly from Audi, but from one of Audi's concept car shapers. As well, in the pandemic, they had nothing to do, and they decided, come on, let's play a little bit around. How would this car look like? And I got in contact with them and shot this car in their, let's say, presentation hall. So which, you could darken it and light the car. But if you are in a proper car studio, you have these huge flats, like 10 by 6 meters or so, massive reflectors hanging from the ceiling, and you can super precise control the lighting on the car and make it incredibly pristine and beautiful. But of course the difficulty is in the studio you have to invent everything. You have every piece of life or realism, or if you bring realistic stuff in the picture, you have to build it and create it and organize it and bring it to the studio. And this is what I love on location shoots, that things are happening that you cannot control or that you cannot think before. It's like there's a rain shower coming and everything is looking much more beautiful after the rain comes down, or you have to go for a pee around the corner and say, oh my God, we have to do, this is such a beautiful road up there, we have to go there. And so many pictures are by coincidence, it's just happening and you see something, or something is coming to your mind which you never imagined. And that's also the difficulty if you do 3D work, which is quite common now in car photography, that someone has to have traveled the world and has needed to have seen a lot of things to build up a believable and realistic picture.
I wanted to ask then about, there's a shoot here, I think it's the Mercedes GLS, which is a composited, here it is, I'm just scrolling your website. It's in your studio section on your website, but it's a composite where it's in a sort of Arctic or snowy location. So it's a 4x4 car with the guy, and there's a dog as well. That looks like an interesting shoot, a lot going on there. So you're shooting the car in the studio, and then did you have to photograph the guy as well and the dogs? Because I can imagine if somebody's giving you that brief to photograph a dog, you might be thinking, I'm a car photographer, what am I going to do with a dog? So is there a story with that shoot?
Actually, it was for the Mercedes magazine, and they wanted to see sled dogs together with their super luxury GLS. And it was in the middle of summer, 40 degrees. And of course, they did not send us to South America. And so we decided to shoot it in a white studio. But we got all the dogs live from Maschers around Stuttgart. They came in with huge trailers with all the dogs in. And we had really to put fastening systems in the studio to hold those dogs, because there were, I think, 8, 9 or 10 dogs in front of that sled, and if they start pulling, nothing will hold that sled.
I mean, you managed to photograph them, obviously, but am I right in thinking that was just a bit out of your field?
I mean, in the end, I'm there to make things happen, but I do very much prefer a realistic approach, and I really love if I, let's say, can take a picture to 90% in camera. So I don't really like, these puzzle approach to take 20 puzzle pieces and put them together to one so picture.
I wanted to ask for that reason, because it does seem unusual for you, and so I figured it might have been a challenging or memorable experience. In the studio then, are you working with the same gear, same setup, obviously tethered and everything, but would there be any difference in your camera setup in the studio or out and about?
No, so still phase one is the camera to go. In the studio I would probably use a Big Mac Pro, because it has a little bit more power and is faster. I will have a big XDR display, the 32 inches or so to really dive deep into the image, because the expectations are for a studio shoot always much more higher on technical perfection.
Okay, right.
And so you normally, Porsche people, they will go and ask for, we have inside of the wheel arches, we have little black screws. Can we check if these are visible? I mean, nobody will ever ask for these screws, but they want to see it.
They did want to see them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And most likely they will get retouched out afterwards, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If you see a screw, you're gonna retouch that out. So, but it must be quite good in a way, having that control, and presumably the creative director or art director is there to give you the yes or the no about each picture. Is that a fun process to collaborate that way?
Yeah, you always have to sit down with the art director beforehand and get into his head and really understand what he wants to achieve with these images, so that you can. And then in the studio, it's like a working together. So everybody throws in an idea, and you are in a little slalom. You reach your final destination.
Yeah. With that, is it easy to stray away from the initial sort of pre-visualization in that way, or is everybody consciously just drilling it down to that one thing?
I mean, firstly, you're really drilling it down to the specifications you got, but then you can roam a little bit more freely and say, okay, what if, and then maybe try to get the better picture, present it as well, and if you're lucky, the client says, yes, that's really cool, let's take this one.
Let's change direction slightly, because I wanted to ask you about some still life photography, if that's okay. And there's some really interesting projects in the still life section of your website. Which one do I want to ask about? There were two that particularly caught my eye. One is, I think they're the scents that go inside the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that project? Was that an advertising shoot or some personal work?
Yeah, that was just a personal project, because I like the shapes of the different air fresheners, because they have round and more like a sailboat or stuff like this, and but you still see a little bit the red or blue fragrancy blob inside.
Yeah.
And I was just for my own pleasure shooting those.
Yeah, was that like a lockdown thing, or?
No, that was way before. In lockdown, I was going into Matchbox. So there's even a separate website. It's lixlux.de. It's LIXLUX.de.
Okay.
And it's all about Matchbox and Corgi and Hot Wheels.
Okay.
And because I still have the cars of my childhood in my cellar, and I took them out and started to play around, like ideas, what happens, those drama moments when you lose a car on the playground,
mm-hmm.
and it still sits there hidden behind some foliage, or maybe creating dramatic shadows of the cars and all that stuff. So just like, photographing many different aspects from these cars.
Okay, and that was your lockdown project?
Exactly, yeah. So it was together with my favorite post-producer.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a keen Matchbox fan, and so we've thrown together our collections and played around with ideas, and he was post-producing and I was happily shooting, and in the end we created the website.
Okay, it's great, and there's a lot of different styles of shooting on the website. So, were you able to transfer some of your normal skills onto this, or were you just completely playing and finding new ways to do things?
In the end, I could transfer because small cars, big cars, more or less the same. Of course, you had to size down the normal lamps to meet the matchbox size, because if you have a normal flash head, it's way too big because everything is bright. So you have to move to microscopic lighting devices or very small LED strips and stuff like this. So everything has to be tiny to get the crisp quality in the bodywork of the cars.
Okay. I'm wondering if, I know sometimes with photographers, I've spoken to people before who are shooting personal work that's a little different and a little quirky, but that's actually opened up some work doors for them. I was wondering if this has led you to any other opportunities?
Not for now. So it was mentioned in a couple of photography magazines, and but normally you never know because nobody tells you, oh, I saw your matchbox photography and could you shoot my Lamborghini?
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't work like that.
And so, but who knows? I mean, as you know, you have to run around doing crazy things, and the more you do, the more likely a job will come around and somebody will see it and say, hey, let's call him. Yeah.
Okay, it's really interesting, and I'm always wary of having like technical conversations because I know it might be boring for some people, I don't know, but with what you do, it would just felt like the right way to go at it with you and to really understand some of the workings of how it's done with you, because it's a lot more than it seems, It's one of those things where the end result can look effortless, like there's just a car next to a mountain or whatever, but how much has gone into that? That's really fascinating to me. So hopefully some listeners are still with us. Okay, this is a round called Double Exposure, and where I'm going to ask you about the story behind a particular shoot, and then I'll throw it back to you to tell me the story behind another particular image that you like. So I know that we've touched on a few shoots already, but there were two, I suppose, that caught my eye as maybe interesting to talk about. I thought for you shooting the Panamera in New York, that looks like a really good fun experience. Maybe we can touch on that, but I can't go past the Lamborghini Countach because that is the car that was the poster on my wall when I was a kid, and you had the opportunity to photograph that. Is there a story behind that one? Was it as cool to do that as I'm thinking it would be?
I think this was for a German financial magazine, and they organized that 50 years special edition Countach, and it was just, as well a picture on my wall, and it is just a fantastic beast, and you still can't believe when you're standing in front of the real thing, and the smell, the leather and the oil and the whole machinery, and it's just like, wow, it's really overwhelming. But then you have to step back a little bit, switch off the car geek and make something special out of the shoot, or shoot the car like so that it's not looking like a reproduction, just I was there and the car was there, and yes, just to prove it, I'm here, but you have to put the car in a surrounding and create a complete photograph. And that is at least this is one goal I would like to achieve with every shoot, that it looks like the car is there really natural. So what I hate most is like race cars standing in a 45 degree angle on a racetrack, like posing like a girl. So, hello, here I am. I mean, a car on a racetrack is driving.
Yeah.
Or if it stands, it's broken down.
Yep. Yep. If the wheels aren't turning, it's not moving, right?
And I would like to have that the viewer is looking at my images and is believing what he's seeing. So there is no car posing, so there's not artificial. It's like, oh, someone came by and snapped that scene. That would be my favorite approach.
Okay. From your career looking back, is there a particular shoot or moment that stands out that's got a good story that goes with it?
I mean, one of my really favorite shoots, because I'm also love planes, was for Mercedes airport service. It was like a service where you can drop your car for inspection when you are departing and pick it up when you're coming home. And they wanted to have a shot from a jet straight from the front, that you are looking at the nose of the plane, and right in front of the hull or the body of the plane stands a Mercedes. So it looks like the Mercedes is getting wings and a fuselage.
Okay.
And in these days, this was shot in real. So we went to the Mojave Desert to a jet, how do you say? It's a cemetery.
Okay.
It's a huge, enormous area where jets are stored when airlines do not longer need them. Hundreds of jets. And we hired the runway for 24 hours, and we hired a plane for one day. And it was pulled like on the runway, and I was standing there, and left, right. And it was like my airport, my plane, put the car in front, and then the creative director showed up and said, well, but the mountains in the far distance are too high. I would like a little bit lower mountain, so we have to change the airport.
Oh, I was thinking change the lens.
It was like, I think, 100,000 or so, renting the plane and the airport and blocking the air traffic for one day on the airport. So it was like, no, let's sit down, have a beer, and I'm explaining you why we cannot change the airport, but we have to make the image now.
So what was the solution? Did you manage to shoot a different angle or just use a wider lens?
No, I mean, in the end, he was like accepting that. I mean, it was a tiny, it was just probably to say something, or it really doesn't make any difference.
It sounds really fun. It sounds really like you've had and it looks from your portfolio, you must have had a lot of great experiences along the way. Right, Steffen, that brings us, if you're okay for another couple of minutes, to the quick fire round. So some quick questions.
Yeah.
It's only quick fire in name. You can take your time if you want to. But,
okay,
I call the round motor drive. So, okay, wide angle or telephoto?
Wide angle.
Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, definitely.
Okay.
Espresso.
All right, so I just spoke to a wildlife photographer the other day, and I was asking, what animal would he be if he was an animal? And I wanted to ask you what kind of car you would be if you were a car.
Land Rover Defender 130.
Okay, old style or?
Old school, reliable mechanic, no fancy bling, but keeps going.
Okay, that's good. Well, those are great qualities, right? Okay, would you use an expensive lens cloth or just the corner of your shirt?
Expensive lens cloth. Yes, because with these phase 1 lenses that are 8, 9 or 10,000 euros, it should be a microfiber something.
Yeah, they should come with their own windscreen wipers.
Yeah, that would be an idea.
Yeah, well, you can send that idea in. Okay, which is your go-to emoji? Do you use emojis on your phone?
I'm afraid it's the wink eye. And crazy, stick your tongue out, like.
Okay, you did it so well. Okay, who are the best German band or musician?
Oh, I think it's the old school answer would be Kraftwerk, because they are really brilliant and fueled the whole modern techno music. But I also like Oliver Kolecki.
Oh, okay,
Cool
Oliver
dance floor
Kolecki.
sound.
I was just thinking when we were talking about the Lamborghini, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but I had a shoot a few years ago where I photographed the Knight Rider car.
Oh yeah.
There was a guy locally who had one, and he was using it for events and birthdays and things like that. And I just when I was looking at that black Lamborghini, I just remembered that, and I must have made a real mess of it compared to what you would do. But and now when I was asking about music, I remembered that I think David Hasselhoff had successful in Germany, so just putting those things together. But yeah, anyway, what's a weird thing I could find in your camera bag?
Ooh. That's an excellent question.
Everybody has some weird field of craft thing that it shouldn't be there, but it has a use, you know?
That's really hard. So maybe earplugs, because I hate sleep in noisy hotels.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Great.
It's
Perfect.
definitely a must go.
Great answer. My camera bag is getting bigger and bigger with all these cool answers that I get. Okay,
Good.
Name a photographer either from your field or out with that we should all know about.
So my all-time favorite is Reinhard Wolf, a German photographer from Hamburg, doing lots of architecture work in food photography. And he, as you mentioned, the bow tie, he always showed up in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, even on location shoots or architecture shoots in the middle of the mud or so, he was always showing up in a suit and was very, very gentleman-like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when do you feel at peace with the universe?
In the garden, definitely, or in any garden. So yeah,
It's a great place to be at one with nature, isn't it?
yeah.
Thank you, Steffen. I really appreciate your time and your input. And they're just getting to the end, I'm thinking, I should have asked this and that, but I think you've given so much in this interview, such a great insight into that world, because it's really specialist, you know, like me, I've been a bit of a journalist over the years, and I would never get to touch anything like what you do. So it's really interesting to hear how it all works and understand that I could never do it. So, really appreciate you, Steffen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Graham, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. And whenever questions are popping up, we do a second podcast.
Well, there you go, a teaser for part 2 of this interview, and that's an invitation I'll definitely take up somewhere down the line. Thanks as always for listening. Follow Steffen on Instagram and check out his website to see more of his amazing work. Links to everything we spoke about are in the show notes. If you enjoy this episode, then check out my conversations with Monty Rakusin and Scott Schuthenius. Really recommend those if you're into the commercial or technical side of photography. That's all for now. Take care, enjoy your photography, and I'll see you out there.